The heavy oak door creaked open slowly, allowing a beam of warm summer light to spill into the dimly lit sitting room at Gatcombe Park. Zara Tindal stepped through the entryway, her face etched with sadness and eyes red from crying. She clutched a crumpled tissue in one hand as she made her way across the Turkish rug to an overstuffed armchair beside the fireplace. Her husband Mike followed close behind, his expression grave. He placed a reassuring hand on Zara's shoulder as she sank into the plush chair, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. This was arguably the hardest day of their lives so far. Just a few hours earlier, Zara had been at her mother Princess Anne's side at the prestigious King Edward VII Hospital in central London. What they had hoped was just a routine checkup for the 72-year-old Princess Royal took a devastating turn when the consultant oncologist delivered the shocking news. After a battery of scans and tests, the grim-faced doctor regretfully informed them that Anne was suffering from stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The disease had spread aggressively throughout her organs and was deemed inoperable and incurable with current treatments. Without radical experimental therapies, her prognosis was 3 months at most. The words hung like a pall over the Tindal family as Zara struggled to catch her breath, chest heaving with racking sobs. Her mother, her rock, her inspiration, the resilient figure of unbending strength that had shaped her very existence, was now facing a cruelly abbreviated future. How could this happen? She gasped between sorrowful outbursts, burying her face in her hands. Mum has always been so vibrantly healthy, so utterly tireless and unstoppable whenever she sets her mind to anything. To think that vile, insidious thing is spreading inside her at this very moment, plotting to snuff out her life before the year is up. Mike's jaw tensed as he squeezed his wife's shoulders, holding back his own flood of emotions. As a former rugby player, he had witnessed career-ending injuries and the bodily toll of the unforgiving sport. But nothing could have prepared him for this ambush by terminal disease striking at the very heart of his family. The doctors, they've bloody well ruled out any treatment able to halt this? His voice strained to stay level. Not even those clinical trial regimens, or a dit of radiation and chemo. There must be some new cutting-edge protocol that could at least buy her time. Zara shook her head slowly, strands of blonde hair shielding the fresh streams of tears. The oncologist seemed rather hopeless about it all, I'm afraid. He said by the time this cancer was detected, it had already progressed too far for any therapy to do more than temporarily relieve symptoms at this stage. She sniffed heavily, blotting her reddened eyes with the wadded tissue. I was so naive, hadn't the faintest clue this malignancy could be silently festering and consuming Mum from within while she powered through her ridiculously busy schedule as though nothing were amiss. That's just so like her stubborn nature, to brush off any ailments and fight through the pain while putting all others before herself always. At that, Zara broke down again at the thought of her indomitable mother, the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth and Princess Anne's impeccable sense of duty, withering away mere months from now. The Princess Royal had been scheduled to undertake 14 overseas royal tours this year alone, not to mention her hands-on work with dozens of British charities and organizations. For such a force of nature to be permanently grounded from her unwavering lifetime of service was utterly unfathomable. The grief hung like a suffocating pall within the estate's claustrophobic chambers. You know she refused to delay or reschedule a single engagement today after being diagnosed? Zara mumbled in a hollow tone, realizing her mother had indeed powered through the catastrophic hospital consult like it was merely another minor scheduling hiccup. Mum simply accepted the prognosis with a stiff upper lip, then insisted on keeping her commitments to those British Paralympians and wreath reformists as planned this very afternoon. Mike exhaled a deep, mournful sigh, shaking his head in dismayed admiration. That's so quintessentially Her Royal Highness, isn't it? Facing down the darkest of adversities head-on without flinching, defying even the inevitability of her own mortality because the people who admire and rely upon her must always come first. He ground his molars, then suddenly shot upright in a burst of anxious energy. Pacing back and forth across the den's Aubusson carpet, Mike's voice took on a more insistent tone as he sought some pragmatic solution, any faint shred of hope to cling to against this impending nightmare. Right then, time for a what's what. An Everest-sized wake-up punch right to the mouth, this cancer menace barging onto our home front uninvited. But perhaps we haven't quite explored every last available option here for Her Majesty just yet? Zara glanced up from her despondent reverie, squinting through teary eyes. Such as? Well, I don't know, leap of faith experimental trials in Switzerland or Germany? Those snake oil stem cell injections from dubious medical outfits in Mexico and the Caribbean that sell false hope to the rich and desperate? Mike was spitballing every quacky long-shot remedy that entered his mind, trying to distract himself from the sickening reality of his mother-in-law's dire condition. How about sodded, holistic healing hogwash? Traveling immersive retreat centers offering probiotic injections derived from the fecal matter of Mongolian centenarians? I've read those barmy procedures can supposedly reset one's gut microbiome and rejigger their immune system to spontaneous remission. Zara couldn't stifle a mournful chuckle at her husband's frantic, desperate spitballing. As ill-advised as those wildly unproven treatments sounded, she still appreciated the sentiment behind his refusal to surrender to the crushing prognosis so easily. Perhaps you're right, darling. We can't afford to leave any stone unturned against this heinous disease, even grasping at far-flung straws. Wiping fresh tears from her cheeks, Zara struggled to her feet and wrapped her arms around Mike's sturdy frame. Still, we both know Mum wouldn't entertain any sort of fanciful, unapproved treatments peddled by delusional medical shysters. She is first and forever a devout believer in the established science and conventional therapy protocols, even to her own detriment, it seems. The couple held each other in silent, mutual sorrow as the weight of Princess Anne's situation continued sinking in. Resigned to put on brave faces for the sake of their own children, they stood preparing themselves for the harrowing road ahead over these next few cruelly fleeting months. Suddenly, the sitting room door creaked open again as two young voices piped up from the hallway. Mummy? Daddy? We're back from the stables. Have you heard any news about Grandmum yet? Isla and Lena wandered in, still adorned in their riding breeches and boots from an afternoon lesson on the estate grounds. The rosy-cheeked girls froze in their tracks, sensing the emotional tension and malaise saturating the room as their parents turned to face them. Oh darlings, please come have a seat with us, Zara began shakily, her throat tight with surging grief. There's something terribly important your father and I need to speak with you about concerning Granny. As the spring daylight faded to evening outside, Gatcombe Park slipped into twilight's warm amber embrace, its bucolic splendor seeming to restore just a fleeting shred of comfort amidst the Tindal family's escalating turmoil. *********. 3 weeks later. Windsor Castle, Berkshire. Zara gazed out over the meticulously manicured grounds surrounding the regal 950-year-old royal residency, her racing mind abuzz with anxious thoughts. She sighed wistfully at the picturesque serenity draped across the pristine hedgerows and tree-lined vistas unfurling beyond the open-air terrace where she stood. You know, no matter how many times I visit these palace estates, their tranquil beauty never fails to soothe my soul, a familiar rasping voice echoed from behind Zara, causing her to spin around. Emerging slowly from the archway onto the terrace, Princess Anne looked every bit as radiant and formidable as ever, save for the faintest tinge of weariness now evident around her crystalline eyes. She was clad in a smart grey blazer with matching jodhpurs and boots, ever the picture of put-together elegance despite her escalating health crisis. Mother, you know you shouldn't be up and about waltzing around the castle corridors without an escort. Zara clutched her chest in surprise before rushing over to support the princess by her elbow. Where the devil are your ladies-in-waiting or at least a bloody footman? Anne pursed her lips and waved off her daughter's admonishments while steadying herself with the jade-handled teak cane she now relied upon of late. Oh pish, you fret far too much my darling girl. Need I remind you that I've been navigating these castle grounds since before you were born? Losing my sense of direction among Windsor's shrubberies will hardly be the first malady to bring me low at this stage of my life. That last quip caused Zara's expression to darken as she absorbed the bitter fatalism behind her mother's casual gallows humor. How easily Anne seemed to slip into that aloof, sardonic tone when confronting head-on the brutal prognosis looming before her. The Princess Royals.